In a quiet little town where life moved at its own slow pace, everyone seemed to know each other's business. Gossip traveled faster than the wind here, and fitting in was almost like an unspoken rule. For 16-year-old Maya, however, blending into this world wasn't easy. Born to immigrant parents from India, she stood out in ways that made her both curious and vulnerable in the eyes of her peers. Maya loved her culture, the vibrant clothes, the rich traditions, the stories passed down through generations, but it often felt like no one else around her understood or appreciated them. At school, she was different. Her dark hair, warm brown skin, and the occasional colorful sari she wore during cultural events marked her as someone who didn't quite belong. Whispers followed her down the hallways, and sometimes people stared when she carried her lunchbox filled with homemade rotis and spicy curries. She tried not to let it bother her too much, but deep down, it stung every time someone turned their nose up at what made her unique. One crisp autumn afternoon, Maya was walking home from school, lost in thought. The golden leaves crunched under her feet as she listened to music on her headphones, trying to escape the stress of college applications and the pressure to be perfect. She dreamed of becoming a writer someday, imagining herself crafting stories that would inspire others just as much as her grandmother's tales had inspired her. But as she rounded the corner near the park, her peaceful bubble burst. A girl stepped into her path, flanked by two others who giggled nervously behind her. It was Chloe, a name that sent shivers down many spines in school. Known for her sharp tongue and cutting remarks, Chloe ruled the halls with an air of superiority. She smirked as she blocked Maya's way, her arms crossed like she owned the sidewalk. Well, Chloe said, her voice dripping with mockery. Look at you. What's all over your hands? Is that dirt? Maya stopped dead in her tracks, her heart pounding. Her hands were decorated with intricate henna patterns, remnants of a family celebration held over the weekend. To her, they were beautiful, a symbol of love, joy, and tradition. But to Chloe, they were just another excuse to pick on her. You're disgusting, Chloe continued, pointing at Maya's hands. You look so dirty. Don't you ever wash? The words hit Maya like a punch to the gut. She felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment as tears welled up in her eyes. Every instinct told her to say something back, to defend herself, but the lump in her throat wouldn't let her speak. Instead, she stood there, frozen, as Chloe laughed cruelly and strutted away with her friends trailing behind her. As Maya watched them disappear around the corner, she felt something inside her break, not just her pride, but also the fragile shield she'd built to protect herself from moments like this. She wanted to cry, to scream, to run home and hide under her covers. But instead, she clenched her fists tightly, feeling the sting of Chloe's words linger in the air long after she was gone. That night, Maya couldn't sleep. The memory of the encounter replayed in her mind like a broken record. Dirty. Disgusting. Tears streamed down her face as she replayed the scene over and over again, imagining all the things she could have said to shut Chloe down. But beneath the hurt and anger, something else began to stir. Resolve. She remembered the stories her grandmother used to tell about resilience. Stories of ancestors who faced discrimination, yet never let hatred define them. They found strength in their identity, even when the world tried to tear it away. Inspired by these tales, Maya realized she couldn't stay silent anymore. This wasn't just about defending herself. It was about standing up for every kid who felt powerless against bullies like Chloe. The next morning, Maya approached Mr. Thompson, the school counselor, and shared what had happened. While he promised to address the issue, Maya knew this was only the beginning. She started researching ways to combat racism and prejudice, diving into books, documentaries, and online forums. Slowly, she transformed her anger into determination. vowing to turn her pain into purpose. What Maya didn't know then was that this single moment of cruelty would set off a chain reaction, not just in her life, but in the lives of those around her. Little did she realize how far-reaching the impact of her courage would be, or how it would challenge even someone like Chloe to confront her own biases. And so, with a newfound sense of resolve burning within her, Maya took her first step toward change, ready to rewrite the narrative, not just for herself, but for everyone watching. The days that followed the incident with Chloe were tough for Maya. Every time she walked through the school corridors, she could feel eyes on her, judging her, sizing her up. The memory of Chloe's cruel words echoed in her mind like a haunting melody she couldn't escape. She replayed the scene over and over again, Chloe's smirk, the way her friends laughed as if it were some kind of joke, the way the word dirty lingered in the air long after they had walked away. It was humiliating, infuriating, and deeply painful. But something inside Maya had shifted. For so long, she had let people's opinions roll off her back, telling herself that their ignorance wasn't worth her energy. This time, though, it felt different. Maybe it was because the insult had struck at the very core of who she was, the tradition she cherished, the culture she loved, the family she adored. Or maybe it was because she was tired of shrinking herself to make others comfortable, tired of pretending it didn't hurt when people mocked her for being different. Whatever it was, Maya knew she couldn't stay silent anymore. That night, as she lay awake staring at the ceiling, Maya thought about her grandmother. Her grandmother had always been her guiding light, sharing stories of resilience and strength from their family's past. She remembered one story in particular, a tale about their ancestors who had faced discrimination during difficult times but never let hatred define them. They found power in their identity, even when the world tried to strip it away. They celebrated their culture, held on to their values, and taught their children to do the same. Maya realized that this moment wasn't just about her, it was bigger than her. There were other kids out there who felt powerless, who were afraid to speak up because they didn't think anyone would listen. If she stayed quiet now, what message would that send? Would it tell others that it was okay to let bullies win? No, Maya decided. She wouldn't let fear silence her anymore. She would use this pain to fuel something greater, something that could inspire change. The next day, Maya approached Mr. Thompson, the school counselor, during lunch break. He was an older man with kind eyes and a calm demeanor, someone students often turned to when things got overwhelming. Maya hesitated at first, unsure of how to begin. But once she started talking, the words poured out like a river breaking free from its dam. She told him everything, how Chloe had called her dirty, how it made her feel, and how she wanted to do something about it. Mr. Thompson listened patiently, nodding along as Maya spoke. When she finished, he placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "I'm really sorry you had to go through that," he said gently. "No one deserves to be treated that way. Let me talk to the principal, and we'll see what we can do to address this." While Maya appreciated his support, she knew that discipline alone wouldn't fix the root of the problem. Punishing Chloe might give her temporary satisfaction, but it wouldn't stop others from thinking or acting the same way. What the school and maybe even the entire community needed was education. People needed to understand why comments like those hurt so deeply, why cultural differences should be celebrated rather than ridiculed. And Maya was determined to be the one to show them. Over the next few weeks, Maya threw herself into research. She spent hours reading books and watching documentaries about racism, prejudice, and cultural diversity. She joined online forums where people shared their own experiences of discrimination and discussed ways to combat it. The more she learned, the angrier she became, but also the more inspired. She realized that while hate existed in the world, so did love, kindness, and the Potential for growth. All it took was effort and willingness to listen. One evening, as Maya sat at her desk surrounded by notes and open tabs on her laptop, her mother walked into the room. She glanced at the screen and raised an eyebrow. "What are you working on?" she asked curiously. Maya hesitated before answering. How could she explain to her mom that she was trying to fight back against the ignorance that had wounded her? That she wanted to turn her pain into purpose? Finally, she simply said, "I'm writing an essay for English class." Her mother smiled warmly. "About what?" "About henna," Maya replied, surprising even herself with the answer. As soon as the words left her mouth, she realized how perfect the topic was. Henna wasn't just ink on skin. It represented beauty, tradition, and connection. It was a part of her heritage that brought joy and meaning to her life. Why not share that with the world? With renewed determination, Maya began drafting her essay. She titled it "Henna Stains Are Beautiful." In it, she described the intricate patterns of henna, how each design told a story passed down through generations. She wrote about the festivals and celebrations where women gathered to apply henna together, laughing and bonding as they adorned each other's hands and feet with art. She talked about the significance of henna in weddings, religious ceremonies, and everyday life, emphasizing how it symbolized love, prosperity, and good fortune. But Maya didn't stop there. She also opened up about the sting of being called names simply because she looked different. She explained how words like dirty cut deeper than any physical wound, leaving scars that lingered long after the moment had passed. Yet, she ended her essay on a hopeful note, urging readers to embrace differences instead of fearing them. After all, she argued, diversity was what made humanity rich and beautiful. When Maya finally finished writing, she read it aloud to herself, making sure every sentence carried the weight of her emotions. By the time she reached the last paragraph, tears streamed down her face, not from sadness, but from pride. For the first time in weeks, she felt a sense of control. She wasn't just a victim of someone else's cruelty. She was a storyteller, a voice for those who couldn't speak for themselves. The following week, Maya stood nervously in front of her English class, clutching a piece of paper in trembling hands. Their teacher had assigned a personal essay project, and Maya saw this as her chance to share her truth. As she began reading her essay aloud, the room fell silent. At first, her voice wavered, uncertainty creeping into her tone. But as she continued, describing the vibrant colors of festivals and the laughter of family gatherings, her confidence grew. She painted a vivid picture of her culture, inviting her classmates to step into her world if only for a moment. By the time she reached the part about being called dirty, Maya's voice steadied, carrying a quiet strength that commanded attention. She didn't raise it in anger or bitterness. Instead, she spoke with vulnerability, letting her pain shine through without overshadowing her message of hope. When she finished, the room remained silent for a beat before erupting into applause. Several classmates wiped away tears, moved by her courage and honesty. As Maya returned to her seat, she noticed something unexpected: Chloe sitting at the back of the room, staring at her with an unreadable expression. For the briefest moment, their eyes met, and Maya saw something flicker in Chloe's gaze. Was it guilt, regret, or perhaps just discomfort? Whatever it was, Maya knew she had struck a chord. Later that day, as Maya walked through the hallway, she spotted Chloe leaning against a locker, scrolling through her phone. For a second, Maya considered avoiding her altogether, but then she decided against it. Instead, she approached cautiously, stopping a few feet away. "Hey," Maya said softly, catching Chloe off guard. Chloe looked up, startled, then quickly masked her surprise with indifference. "What do you want?" she muttered, not meeting Maya's eyes. "I just wanted to say Maya paused, choosing her words carefully. I know you probably didn't mean to hurt me that day, but I hope you understand now why what you said mattered. It wasn't just about me, it was about respecting differences. For a moment, Chloe said nothing, her fingers nervously tapping against her phone. Then, almost reluctantly, she mumbled, Yeah, okay. Whatever. It wasn't much, but it was a start. As Maya walked away, she felt a small spark of hope ignite within her. Maybe, just maybe, change was possible, even for someone like Chloe. Maya's essay presentation in English class had stirred something within the school, a quiet ripple of awareness that spread slowly but surely. It wasn't just her classmates who were talking about it. Teachers began mentioning it during staff meetings, and even some parents heard whispers of the powerful words Maya had shared. Her story resonated with people in ways she hadn't anticipated. For many, it was their first real glimpse into what it felt like to be on the receiving end of prejudice. And while Maya knew one speech couldn't undo years of ignorance or erase deeply ingrained biases, she also understood that change often started small with a single moment, a single voice brave enough to speak up. Encouraged by the response to her essay, Maya decided to take things further. She wanted to create an opportunity for everyone at school, not just her classmates but teachers, administrators, and even parents to learn more about diversity and inclusion. So she pitched an idea to the principal, a Diversity Day event, where students could celebrate different cultures, hear from guest speakers, and engage in open conversations about acceptance and understanding. At first, the principal hesitated. It's a great idea, he said, leaning back in his chair, but organizing something like this will take time, effort, and resources. Are you sure you're ready for that? Maya nodded without hesitation. I know it won't be easy, she admitted, but I think it's important. If we don't start somewhere, nothing will ever change. Impressed by her determination, the principal gave her the green light, along with permission to use the school auditorium for the event. Over the next few weeks, Maya threw herself into planning. She reached out to local community leaders, asking if they'd be willing to speak about their experiences with discrimination and cultural pride. She designed posters and flyers, filling them with quotes about unity and colorful images representing various traditions. She recruited a handful of classmates to help, including a few who had approached her after her essay presentation to say how much her words had moved them. As word of the upcoming event spread, reactions varied. Some students were excited, eager to learn and participate. Others rolled their eyes, dismissing it as another feel-good initiative that wouldn't make a difference. Chloe, however, seemed indifferent, or at least pretended to be. When someone mentioned the event in front of her, she shrugged and muttered, "Sounds boring." But Maya noticed something telling. Despite her outward disinterest, Chloe didn't try to mock or criticize the idea. Instead, she kept quiet, almost as though she was avoiding drawing attention to herself. The day of the event finally arrived, and the atmosphere in the school buzzed with anticipation. Posters lined the hallways, each one carrying a message of hope and encouragement. Celebrate our differences. Respect is strength. We are more alike than we think. By lunchtime, the auditorium was packed with students, teachers, and even a few curious parents who had come to see what all the fuss was about. Guest speakers took turns sharing their stories. Immigrants who had faced hostility when they first arrived in the country, activists fighting for racial equality, and artists using their work to bridge cultural divides. Each talk was met with applause, but it was clear that the audience was particularly moved by one speaker, a woman who spoke about growing up as the only person of color in her neighborhood. Her voice cracked with emotion as she described being teased for bringing strange-smelling food to school lunches and how those early experiences shaped her into the resilient person she was today. When it was Maya's turn to speak, she stepped onto the stage with a mix of nerves and excitement. The spotlight hit her face, and for a brief second, she felt overwhelmed by the sea of faces staring back at her. But then she remembered why she was there, not for herself, but for everyone who needed to hear this message. She began by recounting the incident with Chloe, the cruel comment about her henna-stained hands, the humiliation she had felt in that moment. She didn't name Chloe directly, but it was clear who she was referring to. As she spoke, she locked eyes with Chloe, who sat slouched in the back row, arms crossed tightly over her chest. Maya's tone wasn't accusatory or bitter. Instead, it was calm and measured, filled with an honesty that made it impossible to look away. "I'm not here to fight back with hate," Maya said, her voice steady despite the lump forming in her throat. "I'm here to show you that we're more alike than you think. That maybe, if you took the time to understand instead of judge, you'd see that too." The room fell silent, the weight of her words hanging heavy in the air. For Chloe, it was like being cornered, unable to escape the truth Maya was laying bare. Her usual bravado faltered, replaced by an unease she couldn't quite hide. She shifted uncomfortably in her seat, avoiding eye contact with anyone around her. After the event ended, students filed out of the auditorium, buzzing with thoughts and emotions stirred by the presentations. Maya lingered near the stage, helping pack up materials and thanking the speakers for their contributions. As she worked, she spotted Chloe lingering near the exit, looking torn between leaving and staying. Finally, Chloe hesitated, then turned back toward Maya. "Look," she mumbled, keeping her gaze fixed on the floor. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings." "Okay?" Maya stopped what she was doing and looked at Chloe, studying her expression. There was no sarcasm in her voice this time, no smirk playing on her lips. Just a raw vulnerability that surprised Maya. She realized in that moment that Chloe wasn't just apologizing for the sake of appearances. She genuinely felt remorseful. "It's okay," Maya replied softly, choosing her words carefully. "I know it's hard to admit when you've done something wrong, but thank you for saying that. It means a lot." Chloe nodded quickly, clearly uncomfortable with the emotional exchange, and hurried out of the auditorium before Maya could say anything else. Watching her go, Maya felt a strange sense of satisfaction, not because she had won or proven a point, but because she had planted a seed. Whether or not it would grow remained to be seen, but the fact that Chloe had shown up, listened, and apologized even reluctantly was proof that progress was possible. In the days that followed, subtle changes began to emerge. Chloe stopped making snide comments about Maya or anyone else for that matter. Occasionally, she even defended Maya when other students whispered behind her back. It wasn't a dramatic transformation, but it was noticeable enough to give Maya hope. Maybe, just maybe, the walls Chloe had built around herself were starting to crack. Meanwhile, Maya continued her efforts to promote inclusivity at school. She started a club focused on cultural exchange, inviting students to share stories, recipes, music, and art from their backgrounds. The group quickly gained popularity, becoming a safe space for kids who had previously felt invisible or marginalized. Teachers praised Maya for her leadership, and even the principal acknowledged the positive impact she was having on the school community. But for Maya, the most rewarding part wasn't the recognition or praise, it was seeing people come together, learning to appreciate each other's differences rather than fear them. She realized that while hatred and ignorance might never completely disappear, love and understanding had the power to outweigh them. And as long as she kept speaking her truth, inspiring others to do the same, she knew she was making a difference, one step, one conversation, one moment at a time. The weeks that followed the Diversity Day event brought a noticeable shift in the school's atmosphere. Conversations about acceptance and inclusion became more common, not just among students but also among teachers and staff. Maya noticed little changes everywhere: students sitting together at lunch who might never have interacted before, classrooms buzzing with discussions about cultural differences, and even teachers incorporating lessons on diversity into their curriculum. While it wasn't a complete overhaul of the school culture, these small steps gave Maya hope that her efforts were making an impact. For Chloe, however, things weren't quite as straightforward. After her awkward apology to Maya, she seemed to retreat into herself, avoiding confrontations and steering clear of any situations where she might draw attention. Some students whispered that she was acting weird, while others speculated that maybe she was trying to lay low after getting called out during the Diversity Day event. Whatever the reason, Chloe's behavior had shifted, and Maya couldn't help but wonder if her words had struck a deeper chord than she'd initially thought. One day, during a particularly tense moment in the cafeteria, Maya got a glimpse of how much Chloe had changed, or at least how hard she was trying to change. A group of younger students had gathered around another student, teasing him for bringing traditional food from his home country. The smell of spices filled the air as they mocked him, calling it gross and telling him to stick to normal lunches. Maya recognized the look of shame on the boy's face. It was the same look she had worn countless times when people judged her for being different. Without thinking twice, Maya stood up and walked over to the table, ready to intervene. But before she could say anything, someone else beat her to it. Chloe. She stepped forward, her arms crossed and her usual confidence replaced by something softer, almost hesitant. "Leave him alone," Chloe said firmly, glaring at the group of bullies. "What's wrong with you? Just because something's different doesn't mean it's bad." The students froze, clearly surprised to hear Chloe standing up for someone instead of joining in the teasing. One of them muttered under their breath, "Whatever," and walked away, followed by the rest of the group. The boy looked up at Chloe, gratitude flickering in his eyes, but he didn't say anything. Instead, he quietly packed up his lunch and hurried out of the cafeteria. Maya watched the entire scene unfold from a distance, stunned. She hadn't expected Chloe to step in, not just because of her past behavior, but because standing up against peer pressure took courage. As Chloe turned to leave, Maya caught her eye and gave her a small nod of approval. Chloe hesitated for a moment, then nodded back before walking away. That night, Maya found herself reflecting on the encounter. It was strange, she thought. How? People could surprise you when you least expected it. Chloe had spent so long building a reputation as someone who didn't care about anyone's feelings. Yet here she was, taking a stand, even if it was in her own quiet way. Maybe the apology she had offered after the Diversity Day event hadn't been empty words after all. Maybe it had marked the beginning of a real transformation. As the weeks went by, Maya began to notice other subtle signs of change in Chloe. She stopped rolling her eyes whenever Maya spoke in class or shared something about her culture. In fact, during one history lesson about colonialism, Chloe raised her hand and asked a thoughtful question about how modern-day prejudices were rooted in historical injustices. The teacher praised her for the insightful comment, and Maya couldn't help but smile. Progress, she realized, didn't always come in grand gestures. Sometimes it came in tiny shifts that added up over time. Still, Maya knew better than to assume everything was fixed. Change, especially when it came to deeply ingrained attitudes, was rarely linear. There were moments when Chloe slipped back into old habits, snapping at someone or making a dismissive remark, but those instances grew fewer and farther between. And each time they happened, Maya chose to address them calmly, reminding Chloe that growth was a process, not a destination. Outside of school, Maya continued her advocacy work, expanding her reach beyond the classroom. She started writing articles for the school newspaper, sharing stories about immigrant families in the community and highlighting the importance of embracing diversity. Her pieces gained popularity, with many students commenting on how relatable and inspiring they were. Teachers encouraged her to submit her work to local publications, and soon enough, her writing appeared in a community magazine. People began recognizing her name, praising her for using her voice to spark meaningful conversations. The attention was overwhelming at times, but Maya embraced it as part of her journey. She knew that visibility came with responsibility, that people looked to her not just as a writer or activist, but as a role model. And while the pressure could be daunting, it also fueled her determination to keep pushing forward. One evening, as Maya sat at her desk working on a new article, her phone buzzed with a notification. It was a message from an unknown number *. Hey, it's me. I know we haven't really talked much, but I wanted to say thanks for everything. You've made me think a lot lately. Maya stared at the screen, rereading the message several times before realizing who it was from, Chloe. For a moment, she considered ignoring it, unsure of how to respond. But then she typed back, "You're welcome. I'm glad you're thinking about these things. That's what matters most." The reply came quickly. "Yeah, I guess so. Anyway, thanks again. See you tomorrow." Maya smiled to herself, setting her phone aside. She didn't expect Chloe to become her best friend or suddenly turn into a vocal advocate for diversity overnight. But the fact that she had reached out acknowledging Maya's influence and expressing gratitude was proof that seeds planted in kindness and understanding could grow in unexpected ways. As graduation approached, Maya reflected on how far she'd come since that fateful autumn afternoon when Chloe had called her dirty. What had started as a moment of humiliation had transformed into a catalyst for growth, not just for herself, but for those around her. Even Chloe, who had once seemed so untouchable in her arrogance, had begun to soften, showing glimpses of empathy and self-awareness. On the last day of school, Maya stood near the courtyard, watching as students exchanged hugs and promises to stay in touch. Her gaze drifted toward Chloe, who was leaning against a tree, scrolling through her phone. For a brief moment, their eyes met, and Chloe gave her a hesitant smile, the kind that said more than words ever could. Maya returned the smile, knowing that while wounds take time to heal, forgiveness and understanding could pave the way forward. And as she walked away from the school for the final time, diploma in hand, she carried with her not just broken pride, but rebuilt strength, resilience, and hope for a better future.